Number 55 in the name of Deputy Clare Daly. Ampara.
Under the provisions of the Greyhound Industry Act 1958, the regulation of coursing is chiefly a matter for the Irish Coursing Club, subject to the general control and direction of Bord na Gan. The welfare of greyhounds involved in coursing is provided for in the Welfare of Greyhounds Act 2011, which inter alia requires that persons who course greyhounds must have regard to the code of practice in the care and welfare of the greyhound, developed jointly by the Irish Coursing Club and Bord na Gan. The Irish Coursing Club has assured my department that it has extensive systems and practices in place to underpin the welfare of hares and greyhounds involved in coursing, and it goes to great lengths to ensure the highest standards of welfare are adhered to. A monitoring committee on coursing is in place, comprising officials from my department, the Irish Coursing Club and the National Parks and Wildlife Service, to monitor developments in coursing, and the situation is kept under constant review to ensure that coursing is run in a well-controlled and responsible manner. Hares may only be collected for coursing by clubs affiliated to the Irish Coursing Club in accordance with the terms of licences granted by the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. These licences contain 26 conditions which have refined over the years, the majority of which are central to hare welfare and include a variety of measures, such as a requirement that a qualified veterinarian attends all coursing meetings to report on the health of the hares, a prohibition on the coursing of hares more than once in the same day, a prohibition on the coursing of sick or pregnant hares, and a requirement that hares be released back into the wild during daylight hours. Coursing clubs are required to comply fully with directives, instructions and guidance notes issued by the Irish Coursing Club in all matters relating to the capture, keeping in captivity, tagging, marking, coursing and release of hares and the muzzling of greyhounds. I have no plans to ban hare coursing, but I have no hesitation in saying that it is critically important that those involved in the sport must operate in accordance with the regulatory framework and with the welfare of both hares and greyhounds in mind at all times.
Problem, because the rules on the one hand belie a reality that is very different. We have an incredible contradiction where hares are protected under the Wildlife Act, and indeed where all animals are protected under the Animal Health and Welfare Act, with the exception of hares for the purposes of coursing. And this has resulted in a situation in 2015 where 7,000 hares were taken from the wild to be used in live coursing events, and actually we're one of a minority of countries who allow this barbarity to continue, because contrary to your statements, Minister, in terms of the conditions that hares face, the reports from the National Parks and Wildlife Service, who are employed to monitor this situation, would have told you that only 17 out of the 75 events which were held in the country last year actually had NEPS officials in attendance at them. The state of many of the hares requiring assistance released back to the wild in very distressed states is evident in their reports, which would refute the information you've been given by Bord na Gan.
It is an Irish solution to an Irish problem. I'm not sure if Deputy Daly is suggesting that we should have an imported solution to an Irish problem. I would also highlight that a very high proportion of hares netted for hare coursing were returned to the wild successfully. For example, at the end of the 2014-15 season, 99.3% of hares captured were released in a healthy condition back after coursing. Now, we have moved some distance in respect of where coursing was some years ago in terms of the monitoring and the high standards of welfare that we apply in terms of both the greyhound and the hare. And I think that's something that's a tribute to all parties in this: Bord na Gan, the Irish Coursing Club, the National Parks and Wildlife Service and my department. And for that reason, I think we have reached a situation where we have a sustainable industry now, and I do not propose to ban the industry.
Is to ban coursing outright, and I speak as a deputy who represents the only part of Dublin where this practice still continues. And in fact, the Irish Council Against Bloodsports has a video of this barbarity in my constituency in Balbriggan, of agitated hares running up and down within the confines of a coursing field, while coursing members shout and scream at them in that enclosure. The figures of hares that are released back, Minister, would also, and the NEPS officials have said this, many die afterwards, are in a very stressed state. In Nina, for example, some of the ones included heavily pregnant hares, which you've told us are due to be protected and so on. So your rules actually don't serve to protect the hares in that regard, and how could they? When you have a scenario, really, of greyhounds weighing 60 to 88 pounds, travelling at 43 miles per hour, they can do a hell of a lot of harm to a hare who weighs about 6 pounds, even if they wear a muzzle. So the protections really aren't worth what they say. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why the Irish hares, a unique race of mountain hare, is now becoming extinct, even though on the one hand we say it should be protected.
Thank you very much. Minister, to conclude, please.
Anything to add to what I've stated already. I think we have travelled some distance in respect of the supervision of hare coursing, and I don't have any plans to ban it. I equally would add, however, that all those involved, all the parties to hare coursing, must operate within the law and the terms of licences issued to them in respect of hare capture, etc.